So it is time for our Sound of Freedom review, and there is so much to talk about with this particular movie. So let's start with our review.
So to kick off, I'm told that there's been requests to review this film. You mentioned it a little bit before, and just to clarify, the main reason why it's being reviewed this week and not in the week of the 4th of July, which is when it got released in the US, is because now is when it's being released in the UK, and the show follows the UK release schedule.
Yeah,
it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, Mark and Simon weren't like, absolutely not, we're not covering this. They were just waiting until it was released here.
Now, I've thought a lot about how to approach this review.
Yeah.
And it's quite a difficult one because, so to preface this, as a critic, I don't believe in objectivity because that is literally the opposite of a review.
Yeah.
You're giving your opinion. Your opinion is informed by who you are as a person, where you stand in your life, your biases, your experience, everything that makes you as a person. And the other thing as well is that when you're given a platform to review films, you also have a level of responsibility. And that is reflected in not just what your review says, but what you pick to cover and how you cover it, how much time you give it, how you speak about it. I think it's impossible to talk about Sound of Freedom as a standalone movie by divorcing it from its context. I do genuinely believe that it's impossible to talk about it as a standalone film. I wish it were possible, but it's just not. The only reason we're reviewing this film or why people are even talking about it is not because of its quality or lack of quality or its star power or its director. It's because it is wrapped up in a political controversy that both stems from its association, or some might say co-option, by far-right leaning political figures such as former President Donald Trump, who has very publicly endorsed this film, and by people who subscribe to very intense, very far-fetched online conspiracy theories about there being a cabal of politicians, Hollywood movie stars, and financiers who operate a child sex trafficking ring. Now, if you want to enjoy going down the rabbit hole of QAnon online, please be my guest.
Go for it.
Go for it. Not going to stop you.
There's a lot on there.
But it does make it unbelievably hard to talk about this film. And it's unfortunate, and I've read interviews with the director where he bemoans the fact that it is now wrapped up in something that is not actually in the text of the film. Now, it's complicated because the film stars a certain Mr. Jim Caviezel, who is very publicly aligned himself with the conspiracy theories endorsed by QAnon and by Donald Trump, and is not just in almost every single frame of the movie, but is obviously in the promotional train of the movie in continuing to talk about these theories.
If you recognize the name, he played Jesus in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ.
Yes. So the film itself, if you try to divorce it from everything else, which I've tried, but I don't believe it's possible, is quite a bog standard action thriller about this sort of savior figure, very, very knowingly casting Jim Caviezel.
Blue-eyed, blonde-haired.
Yes.
All-American.
Very all-American, former, military, former intelligence officer who rallies against his superiors because he wants to single-handedly dismantle a perverse sex trafficking ring operating out of Colombia. And the way that the movie deploys this plot is by making him fixated on two specific children, two siblings who have been captured and are being used as part of this trafficking ring, and he saves the boy, and then the rest of the movie is spent trying to save the girl by orchestrating a big convoluted plot involving financiers and ex-sex traffickers who have repented and building a sex hotel. I'm not even joking. This is what actually happens. Now, the film is problematic just in the text of itself because it is supposedly operating as this call to action to end sex trafficking, particularly kind of rings of child trafficking. But it has also been lambasted by charities and experts in the field who are actually doing real life work trying to end human trafficking around the world by saying the film indulges in, and it does from the very beginning with a montage of kids being snatched on the street by strangers in white vans, basically.
Was that real? Was that
No.
that was all actor footage?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But also research shows and experts have said that it's dangerously promoting this image that it's a stranger danger, right? That it's strangers on the street who will physically kidnap kids and put them into sexual slavery. Child trafficking, human trafficking in any form is very complex, very politically motivated, very much has to do with kind of personal, economic, social circumstances, much more to do with just like evil people snatching kids from the street. And the film also quite, I think, disgustingly indulges in sort of the gaze of child traffickers. And we're made to see a lot of kids posing for sexualized pictures that are being sold of them. Not a fan of watching that in a movie. And I do find it really contradictory and kind of wrong-headed that then the movie ends with this, a series of texts that are telling us how much this character, Tim Ballard, who's a real person who you can look up, he's a real-life activist who has founded and then exited several organizations that were designed to save and combat child trafficking around the world. It very much elevates him into this position of kind of white savior who is going into different countries, in this movie, in this case, Colombia, and saving the kids almost single-handedly because he is the moral figure, the all-American moral figure who takes it upon himself to be the beacon of light and justice in this depraved world. That's one of the many issues I have with it. The other thing is that, like I mentioned before, I find it problematic to talk about this film on this platform because when you pick a film to platform and to talk about, you are not only promoting it, you are giving people the choice or giving them the indication they should part with their money and their time and vote with their wallets and go and see something or not. Now, there is an interesting side to this story where this film has taken quite a different approach to its distribution. Like the reason it's coming out quite late is because it got, lost in the shuffle of one company acquiring another one, and it, release schedules are quite kind of complicated strategic decisions. It's coming out now. It came out on 4th of July in the States. And at the end of the film, we did not experience this because we saw this film on a screener link. But in cinemas, there was a 2-minute video that shows directly after the film has ended on these pieces of text, like I mentioned, that are elevating and promoting the work of Tim Ballard and the work of the film. And, and it's asking people to scan a QR code and essentially pay it forward. So buy tickets for people who, quote, might not otherwise be able to see the film.
Yeah.
That has worked. That has put the film in a very, very high box office numbers. It cracked, I think, 20 million in its first week out and released in the States. It's been third after Barbie and Oppenheimer, which is quite a significant achievement that cannot be, underestimated. It's money. But has that translated into bums on seats? The seats were sold, but were people watching it? And that in itself has been feeding into the conspiracy around it and the, frankly, quite antagonistic political wrapping around this film of, are people trying to prevent people from seeing Sound of Freedom? They're not. This scheme is working because it's getting money, it's selling tickets, but it does not mean that human eyeballs are using those tickets to watch this film. Now, because of these different things that are surrounding this movie, it's getting too much air for what it actually is. What it actually is a C-level action thriller with very unthoughtful choices directorially, with a very really Z-list kind of celebrity at the helm, with delusions of grandeur and moralizing over things that it actually has not spent any time investigating or any time delving deeper into it. So it is careless and thoughtless, but it is deliberately provocative. And it's provocative in a way that I find distasteful at the least and dangerous at the worst.
So that was masterfully done, Anna. Thank you so much for giving us the surrounding context as well, because I agree it's incredibly important. I want to just hear a little clip from the film. And then I'm just going to really briefly mention a couple of the issues that I had with the film itself.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time with a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
We're Homeland Security. You know we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
Which means she'll disappear for good. Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed. What we do?
You quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
So you also heard there Mira Sorvino, who was intrinsic in bringing about the Me Too movement and calling out Harvey Weinstein. So there's so many complexities going on in terms of the actual filming of this and who stars in it. And Bill Camp, for example, who is one of my favourite character actors, who I see crop up in an awful... I mean, he's been in everything from 12 Years a Slave to The Boston Strangler to The Queen's Gambit to Joker. Like, he's in every American film going. So he does, of course, pop up in this and have quite a major role in it. There is, at the very beginning of this, like quite a disgusting Jewish stereotype, which for me immediately set the scene. Again, like opposite this blue-eyed, blonde-haired American, the Jewish stereotype paedophile character at the beginning just told me exactly what this kind of film was going to be. As in, regardless of whether or not the director wanted all of this QAnon stuff tied up with it, he has made some incredibly nasty decisions in this in terms of casting, in terms of, like you say, the shot. I mean, he's picked an actor who can only do two faces. He cannot act very well in this movie. And it's, you know, he thinks that he's doing emotional, but he's just sort of pouting, doughy-eyed for most of this film. Mm-hmm. He doesn't ring true for me as an all-American action hero, especially when we've seen some really decent action movies, especially when you're up in the same week as Denzel.
Truly.
So just taking it from as that, it's a mediocre film. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think wrapped up with, you know, do you want to spend your money? Where is this going? I'm really glad that you've highlighted everything that you have. I think it's really important for audiences to know. It kind of reminds me when Mel Gibson had a film coming out quite a few years ago now, and I refused to cover it because why on earth would I want to talk about a Mel Gibson film on a national stage? This is not a film that I want to give any kind of air to. Mm-hmm. But if we are giving air to this, I think it's so important that we give the context. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for saying that. I think you vote with your money when you pick what, especially when we're talking about the attention economy and what we're investing our time and our money into. We vote with our checkbook.
Yeah.
Not that anybody uses those anymore.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we pay with our contactless cards, right? And I think kind of making informed choices about knowing where that money is going to is quite important.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would.
There you
I
go.
have done.
Excellent.